We are live. Good morning, everyone. This is episode 136. Those numbers are ticking up when we slot in all those interview episodes. Yep. So it's just Red and Chill today. That was kind of deliberate. We were going to ask someone, but they were busy tonight and reasons. But with just the two of us, hopefully, or the three of us, it shouldn't be too much of a hassle to edit because we have a lot to talk about. And we've also got a long interview with Swotor Minor that will be coming out on Monday. I think the running time is like 50 minutes for that interview, so it's going to be a lot of Utini this week. We chatted for a while, as it turned out.
Sounds good.
Very cool.
Yeah, and that's after editing. So, all right. Let us get Audacity going.
Yeah.
I don't think we have anything else to pre-talk about.
Got everything else ready. Just need Audacity rolling.
I will tweet that we are live.
And if,
Test. Yeah, that looks good.
afterwards, if we could just take a couple minutes to go over stock questions for the interview.
Yeah, sure.
This weekend.
Chill, can you lower your microphone's audio at all? Sorry, I've been meaning to mention this. It's actually quite loud.
Okay.
So, just a little.
Yeah, when I check it on Audacity, it's like if I go down from 99 to 98, it makes like this massive difference, and I'm just weird. It's very sensitive. Like,
Wow, I can barely hear you. Yeah, okay. All right, back. Yeah.
There's
All right.
90%. This is 90. Now 95. 97.
95?
98.
Sounded pretty good, actually.
95 good?
Yeah, what do you think,
Not
Red?
loud. I don't
Yeah,
have
that's
to
good.
scream too loudly? Okay. Sounds
That's good.
Test.
All right.
The waveform is not that big in Audacity, but if you say it sounds
That's
good, I'm sure it'll be fine.
All right. I have tweeted. Yeah, and that's good. Anything else? Or shall we roll?
Let me go turn off my AC.
Okay. Always a good thing. All right. In case you just joined, we are about to start. Red is wrestling with his air conditioning. Or something.
Quite a visual image.
Yes, Laurie. This should be fun. We are going to bring up the gambling thing, and I don't know. We don't know Chill's perspective. He may be in the JD camp. We will see. We'll explain, Chill, when we get there. If you have me reading Twitter, which you may have been.
One or two, things about it, but I don't really know the details yet. So
Okay.
it'd be good to know.
All right. This should be fun. Okay, you recording, Red?
Yep, just pulling up my drive, but you can get going. I'll mute
All right.
myself.
Okay. Chill, you recording?
I am indeed.
All right, let's do this.
All right. Going in 5. Hi, and welcome to the OotiniCast. It's a trap! This is episode 136, being recorded on Wednesday, May 7th, 2014. Can't believe I've never used that one before. I'm your host, Chill, and with me is my co-host, Tio. Hi, Tio.
Hey, guys.
And with us today is Red. So, Red, how you doing?
Doing great.
And what you been doing in-game?
Well, I was preparing for the show, so that kept me out of the game a good bit, and actually talking to some people that I hadn't really talked about the show with before who do listen. I just wanted to lead in with a recorded reminder that we do this show every week, 4:30 PST, 7:30 EST, and whatever else anywhere else, live on OotiniCast.com/live, because apparently they didn't realize it, and I realized we didn't exactly have that in our wrap-up show notes, so
Fair enough. We should
it's a
probably
lot
add
of fun.
it.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
not just guildies in the chat room. There are other people there too. Lots and lots and lots of ranked PvP. That I'm actually starting to get better.
Hey.
It's a hell of a lot of fun. I'm halfway to Brutalizer now, so 7 out of 14. I haven't been able to do the daily every single day, but I was able to. I definitely got the weekly done last week, so that was 9 wins. And it seems to be. I started out by plummeting way down and lost a whole bunch right at the beginning of the season, but I've worked my way up. I'm up another 150 points now from where I plummeted to. And I even have been noticing the queues are so good. I even did an experiment because I heard that May from ToroCast had been queuing up with some of her guildies, and there would be like 3 of them popping into the same arena at a time. So I just decided to grab Jubs and see if the 2 of us could queue sync, and realized that, one, we weren't getting into the same matches, and then this week it's got even worse because we were playing against one another, so we stopped trying to do that. Fortunately, when we went against one another, I did beat him once. I'm not going to say how many times we went against each other.
Okay.
I have definitely seen, since I've been doing the dailies as well, to rack up the comms, and I've also got a couple friends that are interested in joining. We might start doing some pre-made 4s. They need a lot more gear than we do, so I've been doing the regs with them, helping them gear up, and my opinions of the 8v8 maps are actually changing. I've always been pretty adamant about my distaste for hypergates, but I've actually started to enjoy that. I find that it's fewer and further between where I'm getting completely blown out, and there have been a lot of really exciting matches. Alderaan is usually just a good. There's usually some back and forth. Voidstar, we had 2 back-to-back matches that were just phenomenal, where we were actually coordinating amongst ourselves, where we would get, as soon as one door went down, we were deciding, okay, who's going to run ahead, and everyone else is going to stay back and just slow them up, slow them up, slow them up, and we were able to just, door, plant, done. So even Voidstar, which is my second least favorite, I'm really enjoying. So it's nice, now that I'm really dedicating time to the PvP, that I'm finding more and more enjoyment out of it. GSF, I did want to pass on a tip. I've been talking to the guys that we had on the show before, and they're still hardcore in there. The thermite missiles have been improved, and I think because of some of the nerfs to other abilities, thermite missiles are really good right now. It's one of those ones that, like, on a scout you wouldn't have ever thought of using, but they have found it quite useful, particularly with the debuff that it puts up there afterwards, and the amount of damage it does has been increased. Not only does it hit hard, but it's very good for your teammates to be able to benefit from it as well.
Okay. Great.
And I had something about space. I don't know what that was, so that's it.
All right. And Tio, how about your week?
Alright, firstly, let's start with rating. Our guildmate Dan, who appeared on the episode about gunships, joined us on day 1, and Betty from the Utini Templars helped out with healing while Kuze was away on both days.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's just say it was rough. We won't go into too much detail. By the end of the 2 days, we got through the first 3 bosses on hard mode Dread Fortress. Didn't even try Corruptor Zero, and just towards the end did a story Dread Palace, just the first 4 or 5 to get the weekly done, and called it good. This week Kuze is back, so hopefully we should get back into our version of progression. Yeah. Anyway, so it's either Nightmare Nephra, Corruptor Zero, or Bestia in Dread Palace, all hard mode of course. Alright, other than that, I haven't actually spent a lot of time in game on Star Wars Day. Actually, over 2 days I did the traditional thing of watching the 6 movies. They were excellent, of course, except for the first 3, which are still terrible. Yep.
Okay.
I know some people like them. I just recall only too keenly my disappointment when Episode 1 came out, and I came out of the cinema thinking, oh no. But let's hope Episode 7 makes all that better. Also, I interviewed Swotor Miner, the guy from the Swotor subreddit, a well-known data miner. That was on Sunday. I'll be publishing that in a few days. It's quite a long interview, actually. We had nearly an hour, so Yeah, lots
Wow.
of good stuff in there.
Yeah.
So something to look forward to. And I also guest hosted while Chris is moving on the Oceanic Gamers Flashpoint podcast with David and Simon. They called the interview A Hot Cup of Teo. Very cute. Otherwise, KDY, chill, you and me did that yesterday, just randomed in. This was on my level 17 Shadow. It's actually the first time I've done pre-55 KDY, believe it or not. So, impressed with the bolstering. It really does let you play with your friends. I can see how you get pretty sick of KDY, though. The only thing of note was we had to kick that other Shadow because he kept knocking the ads down off the balcony, down below, bringing up lots of friends. After we warned him and he did it again, we had to kick him from the group. So, what can you do? I did want to note, MT40, the May the 4th droid, does actually turn up on all your characters, even if you hadn't logged into them leading up to Star Wars Day.
Excellent.
So that was nice.
Yeah, that is nice. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be lots of characters at some point that become more important to me than they are now. And it's good to know that they'll have that droid.
Indeed, because it is kind of cute.
Yeah.
PvP, chill again. You and me did a couple of matches yesterday.
Whew.
It was rough.
Yeah,
Yep.
One was rough, one was brutal, so...
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that's us or the people we're queuing with on the imp side or just some obscenely good players on the pub side. I don't know what it is. I'm remembering why I...
Yeah, the pubs are
maybe
pretty good. I think some of them have come back, I think.
It would seem so. And I'm really wondering whether to continue or to just stick with PvE. Well, we'll see what happens. And finally, I did want to mention an article that May of ToroCast put up called SWOTOR blog, The Q-Sync Problem. Now, Red, I know that you are indulging in this yourself, and I know with your population on the Bastion, it's a lot harder to get into for it to work. On the Harbinger, with its low pop, as May was describing, it's a lot easier to Q-Sync if your guildies all decide to do it.
Yeah, I think actually a lot of it has to do with the numbers. Like it's just me and one other person, but if you've got 5 people all keyed at the same time, you're likely to be getting in at least 2 of you together.
And May's proposed solution was to allow it to be mixed faction, so that it just makes it a little harder for you to be queued with people like that. But I don't know. I'm not seeing a solution here unless you put in a bunch of limiters into the matchmaking system so that it will not match you with someone on the same account within a fixed amount of time after you do a match together. Like within an hour, you can't be matched with a friend on the same side. Stuff like that could be done, but it just gets complicated at that point. So, I mean, given that on the Harbinger, is it even worth doing? It just seems that you're just going to be gimped because somewhere on one side or another there's going to be people Q-syncing. PvPers will do whatever it takes to win. I mean, that's just kind of part of the personality type. And it's you can't even call it an exploit, really. Well, I guess you can, kinda, maybe, but maybe not.
I've been pretty impressed. The Harbinger, though, has actually been having as much activity as the Bastion. The Harbinger, and the number 1 guy when I checked this afternoon on all of the leaderboards was from the Harbinger.
Did he do that fairly?
Looked like it. He had quite a few wins.
All right.
And been playing day after day after day after day because his little graph had him slowly going up. I looked him up.
All right. Which is great. Perfectly good.
Well, I mean, the difficulty is going to be, even with a populated server, so obviously Harbinger is actually quite a bit more active than last season. But even with a much larger population, if you've got enough friends out there, you might not be able to choose who's going to be with one another, but you can guarantee you're going to be with people. And you don't even need to count it down, you know. As long as you've got 8 people all queuing within 30 seconds of one another, you're likely to be joined up with each other.
Yeah.
And she's queuing on the imp side, so like for the first time, well, actually it was twice, we went up against each other, but we've got about the same population on the Bastion as the Harbinger. Pubs are only 35% of the population, but on your server it's the reverse.
Yeah,
It's like
I know.
36% of the population is Imperial, so.
Anyway, I'll link to May's article so you can form your own opinion or whatever. Anyway, that's my week. Over to you, Chill.
All right. First, a shout out to the chat room. Anuin is here. Bella Star, Colorado J, Gaddock Teague of the Unnamed Switter podcast, Ghost Mirror, Hupra, Cal, Lowell C01, Malvictus, Master Cow. Is it? I can't remember how he pronounces it.
Master Co.
Master Ko? Okay, thank you. Master Ko, Pez, Rikiri, Zukra, Beware 2, Gas Guy, and the Pummeler. So hi everyone. And let's see, I found out about what apparently a lot of people knew about for a long time. It's a long-standing bug. I got on and tried a mail droid on my character, and the cast went off, but no mail droid. And so apparently if you have the mail buff on your character when you log out, uh, your cooldown runs out so you can cast it again, but because it's a buff, the buff does not time out when you're logged off, so it comes back on. So you cast it, and because you already have the buff, you don't get the droid. So you have to detoggle, toggle manually the right click it off and make it go away, and then if you remember to do that before you cast it, then you can get your mail droid. So apparently I just don't do a lot of mail droids right before I log out. So I do them other times. That it doesn't bother me. But yeah, so I found out about that. Double XP weekend. So I did okay. I didn't get, maybe I didn't focus on it as much as maybe I should have or could have or whatever. But I did get my Sage from 41 to 46 now, and through Belsavis, and he's on to one of those middle between planet dealies. So getting close to 50, and then I'll burn him through my Keb as well, of course. I ended up doing 5 Kuats over the weekend, and 4 of them I had the wonderful ability to scavenge the 450 level droids. So because this is leveling, no one else had that ability. And so I ended up getting tons and tons and tons of mats that way, which is great. So I highly recommend power leveling your scavenging if you like to do Kuat drive yards while you're leveling. Excellent. I also received a Cavern Vractal from Force Chuckle, so thank you to Force Chuckle. That's actually my first animal mount, and it also gives me something to place in my Stronghold Zoo when that comes out, or if you're in the French client, Zoo. So there you go, there's a little French for you. Zoo is zoo. And I also decided to go ahead and spend the 800 cartel coins to unlock it on all my tunes. So I'm going to be saying goodbye to the Lucky 77 speeder that actually I have rather enjoyed, and I'll be doing a lot of fractal running around. So that the cavern one is the dark gray / black / middle gray one. So very cool looking, and I love the little noise it makes when it starts up and all that good stuff. So very nice. Thanks again, Force Chuckle. And that's my week. Well, that'll bring us to the tip of the week. We have 2 tips this week. They're both pretty short, so I'll read them both. First one from Nightmare of the Prophecy of the Five server. With the latest patch, several items were changed to be bound to Legacy. Did that mean you could pull together tokens from different characters to get one of those Thorn items now? Well, you don't have to wait for the event. If you go to the GSI section in Nar Shaddaa, you can exchange those canisters for your loot, or you could just pick up one of those great alignment neutral relics for one of your tunes that you've leveled through the XP weekend. So yeah, so Thorn items available on Nar Shaddaa. Second tip, Darth Malvictus wrote in, having a hard time making much profit when you're selling your augmentation kits? Consider selling those component mats instead. You may find that you make more credits selling the mats than the kits themselves. And that's generally a good idea on many types of craftables. So yeah, it pays to check the GTN for both types before you actually decide to go one way or the other. But don't forget, when taking everything into consideration, that you can crit when you make it. So you have to factor that into your figures. By random allotment, the winner was Nightmare of Prophecy of the Five, so congratulations, Nightmare. You'll be receiving one of the latest M8 droids, courtesy of BioWare, and one of the latest cartel packs, courtesy of this podcast. Please send your tips to OotiniCast@gmail.com. by next Wednesday for a chance to win a M8R3 code, courtesy of BioWare, and again, one of the Cartel Market packs. And that will bring us to the Holo feed. Theo?
Firstly, I did want to also thank Force Chuckle, who sent me a Kevin Varactyl as well. In fact, that is also my first creature mount. And I did see the Varactyl. I'd forgotten that it was actually in episode 2. Obi-Wan actually rides the green one for a good part of it. Yeah, it's very cool. Thank you. On to the news. Firstly, just a quick reminder, you will need to be subscribed as of 11 May to receive the Nar Shaddaa Sky Palace with 5 additional rooms unlocked, apparently with a total value of 4 million credits. You'll also get the Subtaroth mini-pet and the character title, The Intrepid. But if you choose to delay subscribing until 15 July, then you'll get the Sky Palace with 3 rooms instead of 5 unlocked, and you won't get the mini-pet or the title. So yeah, 11 May, which is coming up quick. Next, Game Update 2.8 has now been deployed onto the PTS. And what's there isn't anything of much of a surprise. Just a reminder, your characters will have been wiped, so you will have to copy them again via the official site. Now, there's a whole ton of class changes, which we'll talk about a bit later in some detail.
Okay.
It seems they have decided that 2.8 is when they are going to take the Nightmare power buff off Nightmare mode Dread Fortress.
Right.
Which means that as of 2.8, if you do Nightmare mode, you will just be facing mobs with they do the same amount of damage, have the same amount of health as hard mode. They will just have, in addition, the Nightmare mechanics that were added. And if you've been doing stuff recently, you will have already seen some of those mechanics in hard mode and even story mode. Anyway. So, and also, of course, Dread Palace Nightmare mode is coming in 2.8. So... And again, we've actually seen at least one of those mechanics in the Tyrant's Fight.
Right.
Now, just a few little things. They fixed an issue that would occasionally allow abilities to affect targets, even if those targets had 100% or greater chance to defend against attacks. The reason I bring this up is I just remember sometimes, like, Chill, you were being hit by something. I think it was in Terror from Beyond, some fights, where, in theory... you should have had 0 chance of being hit, but you were hit anyway.
Right.
So, looks like there was a bug which has been fixed.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was the whole 95% thing, where there's like that 5% that you just randomly get hit sometimes. And it's good to know that it's gone, because it's supposed to be full protection, so I'm glad.
Alright, Dreadmaster Brontes and the Dread Council, basically the end bosses in Fortress and Palace, now drop a Dread Guard cranial scan for each member of the operation. What's this, you may ask? According to May, I didn't know this, it's the rep item for Oricon. So actually completing the operations will finally actually reward you some Oricon rep.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so there's a reason to finish it in, I guess, story mode or hard mode if you can manage it. So that's kind of nice.
A cranial scan? So like a CAT scan? It's very weird.
Some item you click on and it gives you reputation. What it is, it really doesn't matter. And they've also updated the rewards for using the Group Finder. 30 Ultimate Comms at level 55. 25 Elite Comms, 50 to 54, and we'll talk more about that later.
Oh.
And for hard mode, at level 55 flashpoints, that was for operations previously. Hard mode, level 55 flashpoints upgraded to 10 ultimate comms, and for the tacticals, 10 elite comms. So basically everything's been scaled up in terms of the rewards.
Wow. Get quite a few ultimates that way, I mean, if you really needed them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a way to gear out your ults, I guess.
Yeah. I mean,
or get someone geared up quick.
Hard mode 55 flashpoints at this point are pretty quick to go through.
Is it true?
Yeah.
Alright, Galactic Starfighter, just a minor thing, spawn locations. For example, in the deathmatch, we've got a couple of possible spawn locations or whatever. They are now chosen randomly. So rather than everyone starting in the same one, and then you can click on a different one, you can still choose which one, but where you default to is now random, which is kind of nice. I guess it will spread people
Right.
around. If people haven't worked out how to click yet, will actually be
It'll kind of make them, yeah.
confused. Hmm.
Plus, it very much affected how the games would sort of play out because, everyone was starting from the same spot all of the time.
Yep.
No, I like it because then you don't have. I wonder if that's going to be every time you die,
Interesting. I would
or if it, or
guess
or if
so.
it just chooses one for the whole match.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
I'm hoping that it's every time you die, because you do
Yeah,
have
me
those
too.
people that just never learn to change, and it gives the other team the opportunity to start camping that spawn location.
Yep.
And finally, I believe we have mentioned it previously, the new gunship variant. They describe it as a skirmisher, a more up-close and personal gunship with a railgun and missile-focused loadout, including an option for the new interdiction missile and a new bomber. Now, this is described as an assault bomber, heavily armored and a best in the thick of the battle, able to deploy drones or mines for maximum effectiveness. So just another couple of variants on the theme for those two ships. But as we know, no new role. We're still stuck with the existing 4.
Cool.
But what else is coming? Well, we were promised that roadmap from Bruce McLean, senior producer, and he has delivered about what is going to come between game updates 2.8 and 2.9. And if you were hoping for additional content, you may be a little bit disappointed.
Okay.
It would seem we are not getting any new flashpoints or operations until Game Update 2.9, and in Game Update 2.9 we'll get the next chapter in the Forged Alliance's story arc, which in theory will be the new flashpoints, possibly on Manan. Well, okay, almost certainly on Manan at this point. But before then, and 2.9 is 19 August, when we also get the early access to Galactic Strongholds. So we'll leave the new event until last, but let's just talk out what else they're going to do. For Game Update 2.8 to 2.8.1 for basically 3 weeks, 10 June to 1 July, they're going to be offering double fleet rec and double credits for completing GSF matches.
Oh,
And
okay.
then from 2.8.1, 1st July to 22 July, which is 2.8.2, they'll be giving double Warzone comms and credits for completing Warzones. Now, that isn't a daily and weekly. That is just the matches themselves. I guess it's just a way of encouraging people to get into them.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And also, that'll encourage you to keep going after you finish the missions out. So.
indeed, at least for those 3 weeks for both variants.
Very cool.
So that's kind of a thing for PvPers.
Yeah. No, I'm totally jazzed for this. I just wish it were sooner.
Indeed.
Doesn't mention double XP if you're leveling one way or the other, so I guess not.
I expect not. I think this is supposed to be a brand new mechanic twist.
Yeah, there is no double XP in this. Purely rewards.
Okay.
Though we'll come to that. Next, and none of this kicks off until 2.8, remember, so 10 June, which is roughly 5 weeks away. And just for comparison, the 2.9, 19 August, is about 15 weeks away. Alright, what else we got? Something brand new. I'd seen hints of this that had been data mined, but it's here. Bolstered 50 to 55 access to the group finder to do 16-man story mode operations. Now, which operation it is apparently going to be on a schedule. A particular operation will be available for a few days, and then it will switch to another one. Anyone can queue up from level of 50 to 55. You won't need gear. You'll be magically bolstered to presumably some sort of competitive level, so you can actually complete a story mode. They deliberately chose 16-man because it's easier than an 8-man. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. That's kind of a cool way to level as well.
You will obviously get XP from it. Yeah.
That is neat.
How it works out in practice with a bunch of randoms getting together for a 16-man, not at 55, they
Yeah.
will be bolstered. Well, who knows?
Story mode. Oh, it'll depend on the operation, I guess.
Yep. I'm not sure I'll indulge myself because I can just see potential pain, but why,
Yeah,
but why not?
I'm curious how often the two ops that we have that we can queue with right now even pop.
Yeah.
Put a bunch more on them. I'm not sure that the people are really using it.
Yeah. We already talked about Nightmare Mode Dread Palace and the Nightmare Power buff coming off Nightmare Mode Dread Fortress and the Gunship variants. That's all coming 2.8 on 10 June. Now, also, events between 10 June and 19 August, between 2.8 and 2.9, we will have at least one double XP weekend.
Ah.
The Gree event will be coming back. There'll be the usual occurrence of Bounty Contract Week, presumably every month. And, well, they said the Rackle Resurgence wouldn't be back because the Rackle Plague has been eliminated from the galaxy, but presumably we'll actually get that too. And, alright, let's talk about the really new thing, a new event. The Nar Shaddaa Nightlife event, which will be set in the Nar Shaddaa Casino. So, what it is, in their words, for the first time, players are invited to the casinos on Nar Shaddaa to try their luck on the slot machines. Credits can be used to purchase tokens, which in turn can be used on slot machines. Lucky winners will receive certificates that can be traded in for unique rewards that will only be distributed during the Nar Shaddaa Nightlife event. And that event does run all the way from 2.8 through to 2.9.
Wow.
2 months.
Yes, so you can gamble to your heart's content. Now, I would strongly recommend listening to the next unnamed SWOTOR podcast because JD, Gadok Teague has expressed concern about this event.
Serious reservation.
The problem is, well, it's gambling, and even though it's indirect, people could spend real-life money to buy cartel packs, which they can sell for credits, and then spend those credits on the slot machines. I guess, from my point of view, I can see that. I honestly don't think it's a problem, but from a PR point of view, public relations point of view, maybe you could get BioWare in trouble, or maybe it would just attract more players.
I'm
Who knows?
convinced that they have done their legal research, and I'm glad that they finally put it in. Gambling has so much been a part of SWTOR for so stinking long that why the hell the game hasn't had it till now is my question.
I'm sure they will
Yeah.
conform with any statutory requirements. And the publicity, well, who knows? But just to emphasize, it is credits to spend on these slot machines. And chances are, we don't know for sure, that unlike real-life casinos, which are weighted such that the house always wins, basically, in the long run, I suspect this will be a little bit fairer in terms of the odds of actually winning.
Right. Well, it'll still be a credit sync, but
That was my thought.
You'll get back items or credit tokens for items or whatever. So.
Yep.
Credit sync was the first thing that came to my mind, and let's be honest. Yeah, people could use real money to put into this, but people are using real money to sell it on the GTN and make in-game credits. That's what they want to be spending real money on. I doubt that it's going to be that much of a credit sync that someone's going to be spending $10,000 in order to get every single one of the tokens and purchase everything that they want off of it. It's a lot easier than that. I can guarantee it.
In the chat room, Colorado J is pointing out that there's already something much closer to real gambling just by buying the cartel packs and opening them, which costs can cost real money directly. So
Yeah,
Which is true.
straight up real money.
I had a discussion with JD and Laurie M about this on Twitter, and the obvious point there is the gambling, because the gambling boxes, the cartel packs, are clearly that,
yes.
but not quite so overtly as a casino, which is, well, it's a casino.
I'm curious how it's not so overtly, only because they hide it in a box. I mean, Okay, so they put it on
because it
National, but
doesn't.
it's a lot less
Because it's
than.
Because it's not a casino.
'Cause it's
I mean,
not.
that's the only
Right.
actual problem. The
But it's
physical.
I mean, they could have rigged up
still a
the
specific item that could be in this box. I'm going to spend as much money as I can, hoping that I win that prize. I mean, that's much more overt when it comes to practice.
Indeed.
So would he have more problem with cartel packs if it was rigged up to, be like a bingo game or something?
Maybe if they
Something
called
with-
them gambling packs, it would probably be.
There you go. Which is, I mean, most of us refer to it to something along those lines anyway.
It's because it's what it is. It's just like scratch it or whatever.
Yeah, it's a lottery.
Yeah.
I would prefer that they
I'm
put
the-
something in more than a slot machine concept. Maybe something that had some skill involved. Any of the others, Dajaric, Pazik, Sabik. Something that maybe more fun. Putting in coins and gaining prizes. Unless the rewards are really good, I'm probably not going to spend much time there. Because it's kind of a stupid concept.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't wait. I think it'll be fun to see how the actual mechanic works. Like going to there and seeing what the slot machine looks like. Be like, lightsaber, lightsaber. Oh, Gungan. Again.
And will they use
That'll
the
be fun.
Swotor numbers?
Orbish?
Yeah, Orbesh.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that'll be fun
Yeah.
too.
Well,
That'd be
the
cool.
credit symbol and the numbers are simple enough.
Yep. All right, we'll see. Depending on the rewards, I don't know if I'll personally get involved with this, given I don't gamble ever. But yeah, we'll see.
I mean, I'm going to Vegas and don't plan on gambling either. So, I mean, it's a video game for Pete's sake.
All right. At the end of his roadmap, he did say he reminded us that the next exciting chapter in the Forged Alliance's story arc is in 2.9. So, as mentioned earlier, no new flashpoints until 19 August 2.9, along with the strongholds, and no mention of any operations at any point. Though Bruce does finish with, "We have a lot of folks working on something very big for later this year that I have yet to give details on."
Right.
Paid X-Pack, but obviously. So, yeah.
We know that. That's logicked out just because they've said there's going to be one paid, one unpaid. They've already announced housing is the unpaid one. Therefore, we know what's
It's
coming.
not hard.
So,
Yeah. Now, as our guildmate Bill Lentz said, that's like a roadmap to go around the block. But when you go the entire summer with no content, what are you going to promote? So this is the obvious deficit here. There's a lot of stuff to do, but it's all... Well, the Nar Shaddaa Casino is new, but can you really call that content?
right. It's an activity, but it's hardly going out and fighting a new boss or playing in a new war zone.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's that. That's our roadmap. We know what's coming. So if you can hang on until 19 August, all the good things, and in between, gamble your heart out. And leading up to 2.8, well, I guess more of the same that we already have, which is only 5 weeks away, admittedly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on. Just a mention of the events. The Grand Acquisitions Race, the Chevin event, which we're hoping would come back, apparently isn't going to. I was saying it was kind of one time only, and at least for the foreseeable future, it ain't coming back, even though it probably would be a really good one to bring back. But Celebi.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious as to why they made that choice, but you know, I mean, obviously it would take some doing to make it returnable the way the Rakghoul one is, but I mean, they did do the Rakghoul one, and I would imagine that the Grand Acquisitions race would even be a little easier to do, but
I suspect it might actually have to do with with the they reinvented that event. It's not the same one by any stretch of the imagination.
True.
They created a brand new event, and they might just not feel like there was actually enough to it
yeah,
to
maybe.
make a repeatable event from it.
Yeah.
And maybe the fact they're adding the Nar Shaddaa Casino, the nightlife event on Nar Shaddaa as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's not confuse
And
people.
and there also could be potentially like a lore problem with it if it does turn out that the Gree really are coming back and they're going to be the big bads coming up. Then then having them be our buddies for the Grand Acquisition races wouldn't make much sense.
I'm actually more encouraged by this statement because it does show that they perhaps will, like, Grand Acquisition Race was a part of the story arc leading up to Terror from Beyond.
Hmm.
Perhaps we'll actually have some one-off events in the future tied to an expansion or something. It's possible.
That is a wonderful thing to hope for. Wonderful.
Who knows?
I admire your optimism. But yep. All right, so let's move on. Once the PTS went live at 2.8, Rob Hinkle, the senior designer, started several threads on the PTS forums. They're currently closed until the next PTS build is deployed. But what he was after was focused feedback for the class changes that they've made. We are not going to talk about the class changes because they are very much in a state of flux. Rob Hinkle was really active on the forums, talking to players and responding to their concerns and proposing new changes on all of this stuff. Just a quick summary. There were 4 different threads for Madness Orcs, and Balance Sages. Generally, we feel like there's sustained DPS for a class so focused on dots that there isn't sufficient to really make them desirable inside raids. And along with that, the top of the tree just isn't inviting enough to encourage people to play, and so people go hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't want to increase burst, and so that's what the changes are heading towards. For Assassins and Shadows, they're trying to do something about their raid DPS, which is apparently, by all reports, a bit crap, though Rub actually does pretty well in our raid at the moment. And let's see. The Annihilation Watchman spec for Marauders and Sentinels. Some nice buffs in there. Looks like they may be backing off a little, which is a shame. But speaking personally, I think the more the merrier. And finally, they're talking about survivability of the concealment and scrapper trees for operatives and scoundrels. Just, focusing on survivability, with possibly a focus on events happening as you exit stealth. And they've, again, a few ideas. They're playing around with them. We won't go into details about what they're proposing, but it's worth checking out those threads and getting involved in the discussion. It seems that they are being really responsive. And, Now, just a couple of other points. One change for Marauders and Sentinels. There is a popular hybrid build, I've mentioned it previously, referred to as Dot Smash, where you take points in the left-hand and right-hand trees. It will be rendered ineffective, at least in theory, as of Game Update 2.8. It was taking advantage of something which they are going to make sure can't happen anymore.
Probably tie something to the stance that they're in.
Exactly. So, so no more Dot Smash come 2.8. And that was based at least partially on a post by the well-known Keyboard Ninja on the official forums, who it's very possible we were speaking to in a future interview.
Did you mention the upgrades to the Vanguards and Power Techs?
No.
Yeah, they're beefing their dots pretty significantly. That third tree is going to be really nice. I'm actually thinking once this patch comes out, I'm going to respec and take that into PvP, because it's already got a little bit more damage output in PvP than the it's Assault Specialist for the Vanguard for the third tree and Tactics for the second tree. So I'm just going to talk about the Vanguard. But Tactics does a little bit less damage, but I really like the utility from it, and I get tons and tons of slows. But with this, it's going to be a lot less damage. I'm probably going to spec to it and roll with it.
Yeah, the right tree is fun. That's the one I always played with, and it's fun with hitting hard with the rail shot and all that good stuff.
Well, don't get too attached for that. The next thing we want to talk about is, in response to an observation on the official forums that the class changes seem to be doling out buffs a little too liberally, and this is in this build and in previous patches, Rob Hinkle had the following to say, and it's something they've apparently been talking about. I feel like we probably have fallen prey to mostly buffs because it makes people happy. and we pushed out target DPS values for classes higher than the underlying combat theory on what the system expects. I think you will start to see some of that realization a bit as we try to be a little more careful about pure DPS buffs. And some of the things we've done in round 1 of 2.8 patch are going to get ratcheted back a touch. And then we'll need to decide what to do about the already live classes that are performing too well, Sork Sages.
I can tell you, I've been doing quite well in ranked PvP. I went in against a group that was 3 Sork Sages, and not all of them were particularly well geared. It was devastating. They are very strong right now.
Right. He does say that it's easy to just start swinging the nerf bat, but that isn't really a great solution. In a perfect world, we'll be able to make a bunch of small steps in a bunch of places: survivability, defense, threat, DPS, HPS, that's heals per second, and get us to a better equilibrium. It's just going to take a while to get there. So yes, they have been making classes overpowered. Yes, they recognize that. They're going to try to stop it. How they're going to undo the damage for those classes that are overpowered is yet to be determined. We'll see. We will see. But at least they're recognizing they can't just keep buffing everyone. Yeah. There was a petition thread on the official forums named Repair the Double Relic Glitch, which Rob Hinkle /signed, even though, yeah, anyway. But he goes on to say, on a serious note, they're going to take a pass through the relics and hopefully knock out those last few issues that there are with the procs on the relics, where they just don't interact well, or they do interact really well, whichever one's on the left. So they're going to try and fix that. And getting towards the end here, BioWare are recruiting for a new position on the community team. Now, this is in addition to Eric Musco, Courtney Woods, and Tay Watson. The actual position is going to be acting as a point of contact to build and maintain relationships to all external influencers, including guilds, fan sites, streamers, and more. I guess that includes us, podcasts.
Yeah, and more. We're the
external influencers. I like it.
We're the Professor and Marianne of that list there.
Right.
Chills Marianne, I'm just saying.
And assisting in the recruiting and operations of testing programs, assist in our day-to-day forum management, handling disputes, that kind of thing. So it's just another role to beef up the community team. That's at least part of what Musco's role used to be before he became the manager for the community team. So yeah, very cool. So if you happen to live in Austin or want to move there, get in touch.
What's cool too is that they actually very actively on the boards and on Twitter following this post. We're very verbal. No one's leaving. Tate's staying, Courtney's staying, Musco's staying. This is just a 100% new position, which is actually encouraging. It means
it is.
Maybe SWTOR is doing well enough that they can afford one more community manager. I'm good with that.
Well, in the last story, as far as that goes, we don't know, because Electronic Arts had its Q4 2014 earnings conference call. That was on Tuesday, and somewhere in the slide pack, there was Star Wars: The Old Republic there as an existing live service, but that's it. No mention of it otherwise. I listened to the whole thing, never came up, which probably means it's just performing well, but perhaps not outstanding. Though I suppose on the positive side, Electronic Arts did actually exceed Wall Street's expectations. Their share price has actually been doing really good things since, so well, EA is happy. So hopefully that means that they'll just keep on with SWTOR, and remember there will be a whole bunch of new titles coming out for EA for Star Wars as time goes on.
Well, and I guess the biggest thing is they don't really want to bring up the fact that, you know, one of their primary games is not meeting their own goals in production right now. You know, bumping everything from 2.8 out, except for Nightmare.
Yeah. The conference call is the conference call. It's possible that there's more details in like the quarterly reports and so on, but from what I've seen before of them, they don't necessarily break it down tight enough that we would actually be able to tell what SWTOR is doing specifically. So, yeah.
We do know that there is increased revenue from digital services, digital sales, digital everything.
Right.
So, and that includes
good.
SWTOR's obviously in there, but who knows how it's contributing overall.
Right.
And that's the news.
All right, off to the community corner. Thanks to Scott M. and our old friend Grim for their recurring donations. Thank you. Let's see, Utini Templar's rating report by Cal. Unfortunately, not much to report this week. I had some unexpected visitors on our first night. PJ and Greg couldn't make it, so there was no raid that night. On our second night, we were missing Ari and Jace, so we only did Scum and Villainy for the weekly and called it a night. But then we do have a Codex Corner by Gas Guy. And Gas Guy writes, in this Codex Corner, I wanted to bring to your attention some information which builds upon Red's discussion in the last episode about the overall direction of the SWTOR story. When you take on the Forged Alliance mini-story, you will be given 2 quests which are titled the same regardless of your faction, Empire or Republic. They are Assault on Tython and Korriban Incursion. Completing both will gain you 10 Codex entries, 5 from each. The 5 Codex entries are a combination of 3 lore and 2 persons of interest. The information for the persons are particularly interesting, as these characters are expected to play roles in future stories. On the Republic side, they are Colonel Derek and the SIS operative Theron Shan, while over on the Empire, we have Darth Arcus and his yellow-eyed advisor Lana Benico. So run that mini-story and get those 10 Codex entries. The flavor of the game is enhanced by knowing this information, and you get more prestige points too. And then there'll be a layout of all the names of all of those Codex entries in the show notes.
What I'll do is probably ask Tim Gasguy to actually post on our forums, and he actually did include for us the actual text from all those Codex entries. So we'll get him to post that, and if you choose to go in, just read it all in one place, that's completely up to you. We'll link that from the show notes.
Very nice. All right. And Teal, you wanted to say a couple things?
Firstly, let's just plug your interview with Jesse Chill that you did. That was published as episode 135. There has been a huge amount of positive feedback on that interview. People loved it.
Yeah.
Jessie was great.
Yeah, she really is.
Yeah,
A lot of fun.
That was a really cool interview. I actually just listened to it yesterday and enjoyed it quite a bit too.
Good. Yeah, I'm hoping it's driving a lot of people to her site because like I say, I love that Hall of Shame. So.
Indeed. Indeed.
All right.
Also, the SWTOR Galactic Gamers Coalition podcast that we talked about last week, that Red and I appeared on, it is available in iTunes now. So that has been fixed, and you can now just sub in iTunes normally. Also, something for you two guys, the Bad Feeling podcast, Brian and Chuck are doing something they're calling Freaky Friday, where they are specifically choosing some aspect of the game that they would not normally do or despise. For example, Brian is going to do PvP, and Chuck will do GSF, Galactic Starfighter. So it's just something for us to think about, whether we want to pick some aspect of the game we would normally do and do it. So we don't have to nominate it now. Yeah,
maybe
think about
it. People listening might even want to contribute ideas.
What, for us to do? That's a
Sure.
horrifying thought.
I'm trying to think of something I don't, have never touched on. My only problem is that I spread myself too thin doing this and that.
We have touched everything at this point. We have gone into pretty much every aspect of the game, more or less.
I guess the only thing I could think of is maybe roll a character on an RP server and actually do serious RP gaming.
Indeed.
Never done that.
Oh, and on that topic, we do have an interview lined up with the fine folks from SWTOR RP. That's something else coming up.
Both of you could transfer a character to my server, and then we can run around the world doing open world PvP, because I know you both hate that.
That's true. I do have a couple of lobies on that server, but I haven't been able to get back to them for a few weeks. So, all right.
Oh, sorry, still going.
Yeah.
We have the Kranatoko, the famous Kranatoko, who does the Hypercrate opening videos. He's got another one. I think this one is for the hotshots. Starfighter Pack, a whole lot of stuff. Another great intro. And it's entirely possible that Kranatoko will appear as our guest on next week's show. He's in the UK, which means that it's like 12:30 a.m. for him, but he reckons he can make it. So if that works out, well, he'll be there with us. And finally, our guildmate Darmist has just posted on our forums about wanting to start a non-progression raid group. And with all the stuff coming in 2.8, that'll all get a whole lot easier, but just with the intention of just gearing up, basically, and doing story mode content, at least initially. And who knows what happens. So I will link to that if you are interested. Time, whatever is to be determined.
All right. Yeah, it'll be on the forums, and there's a link to the forums. Excellent. That'll bring us to the Force Feedback, where we read out your tweets and emails. And Force Chuckle wrote, "Never ride on a Subtaroth subway," as the quote. Yes, and again, thank you, Force Chuckle, for the mount. So
Indeed.
Buckeye and at Descartes wrote, "My vote for UtiniCast quote of the week: There's not enough space Viagra in the galaxy." Road.
Indeed.
Fun guest. All right. At Mark_Swotor, "You'll have plenty of room to put all your crap." Great line from Tio in UtiniCast 134. Much lol. The Malgadar wrote, quote of the week 134, "I thought you said you'd talk less." Tio showing his support for Red in his own special way. Way to go, dad mode in the middle of the podcast, mate. Although it was worth it for that sweet Sarlacc Digest discussion.
Yes.
It was less.
It was less.
Heather wrote in from Pretty Little Sith. "Wow, laugh out loud at the casual player that ended up a GM." So I love that bit in the show.
And we should mention that Heather is now apparently a regular co-host on Corellian Run Radio.
That is cool. Yeah, she'll be great. Holy cow, spoilers from you in the UtiniCast today?
Have we lost Jill?
Okay, good. It's not just me. Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Hey, hello.
Hello.
Yep, you're back.
Yep, I'll start that one over. I'm going to start from the holy cow bit. Holy cow, spoilers from you in the UtiniCast today? It's okay, I don't remember too much. I haven't done Pub Side Story. I must not have heard the warning. It wasn't too bad of a spoiler. And let's see, Fenord3125 wrote, "Maybe someday I'll be able to listen to the end of this episode." And Turg wrote, "I shut it off with 35 minutes to go." Bad Feeling Podcasts. "After listening, I realized how little I know about the stories in the game. Noob status reinstated."
Now, I did want to say that was something of an experiment, including the spoilerific Sarlacc Digest, which I'm thinking we probably won't do again. I think we'll keep our regular shows as spoiler-free. However, for something like what Red was going to cover, or what Red did cover in that show, what we'll do is another spoiler cast, like Red did originally with his friend Jubbs.
Right.
Standalone, titled, full-on spoiler, lots of warnings before, during, and after.
Yeah, rather than putting into our regular show. So that was an experiment. Result has been analysed, and yeah, we won't do it again.
And our favorite artist, Adam Schumpert, wrote in, "Not quite done with him yet, but still happy Star Wars Day." And he's done a really amazing job. This is not quite done, but holy cow.
That's amazing. I think the only thing not done is his feet?
It's yeah, exactly. A little just detail on the feet and a little bit on the... It's Yoda on one of the little hover chairs and Coruscant in the background. Wow, it's really cool.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
Really cool.
You can see more of Adam's work at his personal website, adam.schumpertz.com. I'll include the link to that in our show notes.
Right. And Lori M. wrote, "Guildy's now comparing most frustrating datacrons. Who thought these things would be a good idea?"
Just remember, there is Kuze's platforming video to at least teach you the tricks you need to make getting any of them easier.
Yes. That's where I learned about backboarding.
And
it helps on quite a few of them. Joe at Overweight Jedi wrote, That's funny. It seems you cannot purchase level 3 speeder piloting from the cartel market in order to race around as a level 1 toon anymore. That's 200 cartel coins BioWare always got from me on every new character. It's a good thing my character slots are already full.
I'm not sure we've covered that before. Well, actually, it is vaguely, I do
It's
vaguely remember that,
familiar,
so,
but
yeah.
yeah, it's kind of a shame. It was nice getting getting going fast.
Believe it or not, with my Shadow, I actually waited until level 15 and then just bought the speeder piloting one with credits. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a lot
I'm too
cheaper that
cheap
way.
to, yeah.
Yeah, and if you have rocket boost at full
hmm
ability, you can get around pretty good. Pretty
Yeah.
good. All right, he said, thrashing the English grammar. Ari of the Utini Templars wrote, responding to the story last week about Charles Boyd giving us the official pronunciation of the SLEs. I do believe I will still pronounce it wrong. SLs anymore? Anyone? The extra E is overrated anyway. And Charles Boyd wrote, we could always go with Aceles. So he's found another viable mispronunciation. I love it. The Malgadar. So I just finished running the Aceles flashpoint, and all the characters say SLS and not SLEs. So it seems Charles Boyd has some explaining to do. Yes,
If
he
we can't trust
does.
Charles Boyd, who's the writer from one of the writers of Bioware, who can we trust?
Well, maybe he wrote it but didn't like include a pronunciation guide for the voice
Hmm.
actors. So the voice actors did what everyone else who ever played the game or will ever play the game or has ever seen the word pronounces it. So yes, it's probably something like that.
hmm
All right, so Esselis it is, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's the voice actors. I think I mentioned that last episode.
And finally, from Ari, nice getting messages like these in game. And Ari sent in a little screenshot from Kaden. I love your guild's podcasts. I listen to them weekly. And Ari wrote back, thanks. I'll be sure to let Tio and Chill know.
So shout out to Caden,
Yeah.
the Harbinger.
All right. And Greg Carter wrote in, you know you've been subbed for a while when you start a new tune and you have 20 mail messages.
Yes, yes you
Yeah.
do.
Mm-hmm. That's about what I have too. I'll have to start a new one and see what the mail is because we've actually gotten more very recently. What with the
There's like
the
two or
new
three
pet,
more.
the new pet. I got the new mate pet. We got the Lucky 77 not too long ago. So yeah, there's an awful lot of them.
The first thing I do for at least the items, you learn all the pets, or you keep
Mm-hmm.
all the mounts until you can learn them.
Mm-hmm.
All the items, like for the digital deluxe upgrade, you just destroy because in your collections you can always get them back again. It
True.
actually takes quite a while. Oh well.
Yep. At Descartes wrote, my etiquette in a pug in Quad Drive Yards is to announce, I am needing on rep items, so you'd better need too. No mistakes or ninjas possible.
It's pretty much become accepted now.
And that's
Need on 'em.
probably a good way to do it just to make sure that
Yeah.
everyone's on the same page.
Yeah.
And for anything that I like, the CZ198 stuff, I'm already max rep on those. I don't say anything to anyone. I was saying in the chat room before that I make a choice. I never hit the X. That's not actually true. For those rep tokens, I do hit pass for that, so that even if somebody's confused, because I can't trade them. It's one of the few things that if you win the roll, you can't trade it. Which I learned with one of my friends. So I just will pass on those rep tokens if I'm already maxed out.
All right, Descartes continues. Speaking of strongholds and pets, make it so that when I come home, my pets greet me like dogs. Hashtag Wall of Crazy. I like that one. And finally, I like the Empire Star Cabal Gree Shroud, and it's so on, aren't force focused. Tython Corbin prophecies make me think a force focused story.
Referring to our discussion last week. Yeah, well.
Yeah, that's the wrench that we're looking at. I mean, and of course, We talked about quite a few of the options that could be force focused, but that prophecy stuff really does throw a wrench into because where the hell, who the hell? The pub side
Right.
says it's an old man. The other guy just says, "Oh, it's now." That's
Well,
the big
we'll
crux.
soon know in 15 weeks.
Yeah, it's a big crux of the mystery. Soon in 15 weeks.
All right, Hugo wrote in. I heard you talking about the delay for Strongholds. Positive indeed, but does this also affect the launch time for the paid X Pack?
I would say strongly no. Absolutely not. Because the whole reason that we're not getting more stuff leading up to 2.8 and 2.9 is because they aren't diverting resources. They are, in fact, focusing on, and they've actually said this explicitly, on the expansion. So, no, it will not be delayed. It will be delivered this year. And as long as you can have enough patience to get there.
And I'll bet you that whole year-end Christmas rush dealy. I'll bet you they've got some managers cracking whips over that one. So.
Yep.
They will do everything they can to get that out before
we will get
the end
it.
of the year. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Chaz Lobo wrote in. I was wondering if you could get the word out about my new job. Star Wars Hollywood Studios. P.S. I was on vacation. I don't actually work there. Just in case my actual boss finds me and sees this. And he has a picture of him leaning up against the Tatooine Trader. Very nice. And
But the same words in Arabish behind it.
Yeah,
yes.
Very nice.
Very cool.
Turg wrote in, what do you think about a Legacy Galactic Starfighter ship? The requisition gain could be somewhere between a half to a quarter of normal ships. I wouldn't mind doing a GSF daily occasionally. It's double XP on alts. But 0 upgrades is so lame, and a few wrecks per character isn't useful. I would give ranked war zones a shot if I could find 3 others. That's kind of a separate issue, so let's talk about that real quick. Legacy Galactic Starfighter I think would be great. It's one of the reasons why I don't do it a lot right now is because I really do have a Galactic Starfighter character, and if I don't specifically log over to that character, I'm not doing GSF, and because it's not great starting off with the 2 stripped down basic ships and whatever.
It's one of the primary reasons I'm not doing my Commando or my Gunslinger in PvP is so that I can do the GSF without logging out. But the problem is that everybody else I do either GSF with or PvP, they use different characters. It's really, really a shame that they made GSF character specific.
My preference would be that it was legacy-wide. You just have a legacy hangar, and no matter what character you log on, probably on a per faction basis.
Yeah.
On the pub side, it's all the same stuff, same ships, same everything, same upgrades. It's all and your fleet wreck and shipwreck are all legacy-wide on that faction. That'd be the way they probably should have gone. Oh well.
I just don't see how they can fix it at this point. That should have been the plan from day one. The way that it works with everything else, but
they could amalgamate it. It could be done, but it's probably a little too much work.
Okay. All right. Tirg also writes, I'd give ranked war zones a shot if I could find 3 others who also don't have PvP gear or don't mind losing. In other words, just go in there to get a few medals and whatever, I guess. And Cracker wrote in, there's no need to be that considerate of other players. I'm always queued with PvE geared twits.
No offense. Yeah.
A basic rule of thumb, I do think that every one of your slots should have, the current expertise gear. And by current, I mean, I don't know if it was Conqueror or Partisan that they implemented it, but basically that the expertise value doesn't change with any of the current upgraded models. If you've got one of those in every slot, you can do ranked. You need, it's going to get you the gear faster, and I've seen people perform just fine. It's if you're actually needing to utilize the bolster is when your health is actually noticeably lower than it ought to be. But I've seen people griping at others for not being in full PvP gear, and I don't think it's particularly kind. I've been playing just fine and winning with teammates that are perhaps a bit undergeared. As long as you don't play stupid, you can perform just fine. And trust me, you're gonna play 20 matches and play stupid, whether or not your gear's good. Right. So you might as well just get in there.
I agree with that. Let's see. Turg also writes, I disagree that DPS was the issue on Nightmare Mode Dread Fortress first boss. Keeping tanks up is the problem. We hit the enrage because we had 3 healers. So we tell the tanks not to die, tell the healers not to let them die, and then tell the DPS to stop taking damage. Defensive and mid packs.
Genius! Why didn't we think of that?
Oh, man, I'm going straight back in there.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah. Well, there's a reason that we took on a 3rd healer, and that was because we weren't surviving. But then you have to have really good DPS if you're going to get through it, as it turns out. So we were actually hoping that the enrage would be a little more relaxed than it turned out to be. Anyway, at Fenord3125 wrote, after this double XP weekend, my plan is to keep switching between classes. That way I'll be good and terrible at them all by 55.
It is easy to, yeah. I do find it a little difficult to switch between them, I'm finding, when you've got so many. But anyway.
Yep. Well, we were going to do that Sarlacc Digest on our UIs and so on. And
that is coming up. That was one of Tim's Gas Guide suggestions. Yeah.
Right. We can talk about it more then.
Okay.
Simon of the Oceanic Gamer wrote, a purchase of Ancient Game Holocron complete. My half-baked dream of streaming Dark Forces draws nearer.
Now, this was over the May the 4th weekend. Steam had a huge special for all of their Star Wars games, and I'll admit I did indulge and got myself a copy of Dark Forces 2. These are games I owned back on probably floppy disk, maybe, or anyway, yeah, the originals. I've actually still got the manuals, so yeah, I may actually play them again. I love Dark Forces.
Do they
too much.
Adjust them somehow so that they're still playable on modern machines?
I don't know. I assume so. Yeah. Well, geez, I hope so. Otherwise, it's just wasting my money. But it wasn't very expensive.
Because I remember, like, sometimes back in the day, you'd buy your game and you'd put it aside, but you really liked it, so you play it on a new computer, and it just technically it would play, but all the timing would be weird, and it'd be. There are
CPU limiters now to make sure that's okay. That's fairly standard now. I don't know if they actually fire up a virtual machine or not, but they do something. Like Good Old Gamers, GOG.com does this. Good Old Games, GOG.com does that for all their games that they sell.
That's cool. Yeah, because I mean, a lot of times they didn't have the fancy graphics, so they really worked on the gameplay. So some of those old games have really amazing gameplay, really, well thought out. Let's see. Gary wrote in, "There is no passion, there is serenity," and has a very nice screenshot on Tython. It looks like that is Tython, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. It's a panoramic shot, as being pointed out. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it looks really pretty that way. All right, let's see. So that will bring us to the Sarlacc Digest, where we go over the issues for 1,000 years, or until we run out of time. And Tio, I'm not sure what this means. Twice.
Neither am I. I think Red put it in.
Yeah, I put that in there.
Okay. What does that mean, Red?
I'll comment on it after we get after Turg's stuff. Basically, okay, for the Sarlacc Digest, because last week so many people didn't get the opportunity to listen to the Sarlacc Digest, we're going to give you one that you might need to listen to 3 or 4 times, but that'll make up for not getting to listen it all out. That was it. Do you want me to move in?
Well, let's start with Ghost Mirror's tweet. So what he said was, it was a good tip on OotiniCast, but it looks like power augments are still better performing for him as a Sentinel than base stat ones. He's running with power augs on his Sentinel as combat spec, the middle tree, and since then his TPS is parsing higher than usual than using base stat ones.
Okay.
Now, we also had an email from Ufalong. So, Red, what I'll do is I'll read through this, and then you can tell us what the answer is. Okay? All right.
Yeah, I'll do that because I am actually ready for both.
Excellent. All right. Ufalong said, now, Ufalong is the author of various stat-based guides. I think he's done 2 so far, maybe 3 on Dolphy.com.
Yeah, 3
Extremely
posts.
detailed, as far as I can tell, perfectly accurate analysis of the value of crit, for example. But anyway, what Ufalong said was, during last week's episode, this was 131, a few weeks ago, one of your tips of the week suggested that players should switch from main stat augments to overkill augments, that is the power ones, due to the soft cap of main stats contribution to critical chance. This is inaccurate and bad advice. For one, the concept of a soft cap is misleading. I find it a term that people use without understanding the math. Anyway, as you may know, some classes have a skill that increases their main stat by up to 9%. These advanced classes are Commando, Vanguard, Sage, Gunslinger, Scoundrel. Guardians have a skill that increases their main stat by up to 6%. Sentinels and Shadows do not have any skill that increases their main stat. Thus, there are 3 potential scenarios to consider when evaluating main stat and overkill augments. And he actually created the spreadsheet which compares the benefits of main stat augments to overkill augments. And we will link to that. He has actually made that publicly available so everyone can see it.
Cool.
He appreciates that the sheet is a little complicated, but he wanted it to try and tell the whole story. The proof or conclusion starts in row 50. Here, he shows that the main stat augments compares to overkill augments for each of the 3 possible scenarios. As you can see, main stat augments provide around a 1% more crit chance, but you lose a bit of damage bonus. So, for advanced classes with a 9% skill tree buff to main stat, the difference is 1 point to damage bonus. For Guardians with a 6% skill tree buff to main stat, the difference is 4 points in damage bonus. For Sentinels and Shadows, the difference is 9 points in damage bonus. So as a point of reference, damage bonus for melee and ranged attacks will be around 1,000, and damage bonus for forced tech attacks will be around 1,500. Effectively, the lost bonus damage from main stat augments is 0.1%. Generally, it is far better to take 1% more crit and lose this small amount of damage bonus. Thus, main stat augments are generally superior. That said, each advanced class needs to consider their build in determining the best augments to use. Ufalong feels confident in saying the vast majority of the time the main stat augments will be better though. So, Red,
Interesting.
tell us more, because you have talked to Ufalong.
Yeah, fortunately, since he reached out to us, I was able to reach back to him and had a really enjoyable time talking with him and really working through some of this. We both feel confident in saying, which I just very briefly touched on, if you've got a 9% bonus in your talent tree, you should have it, and you should be in your main stat. There's really very little reason for you to be in power, because you're only giving up 1 damage for between 1.02% and 0.92% crit bonus.
Right.
Just noticeably valuable. We discussed it a lot, and in general, a general rule of thumb, and most likely, perhaps Juggernaut or was it Guardian? Guardian, they've only got a 6% skill buff. They do have a smash spec. Arguably, if they're playing their 3rd tree smash spec, they might find, if they're really pushing their numbers, they might be able to. It's going to be pretty stinking close, but they might find a power benefit over main stat. The real curious example, and just to refresh, we've mentioned it in shows before, but basically, you've got Marauder, Sentinel, Shadow Assassin. They get no primary stat boosts from their talent trees. 0, zilch. So this discussion is much more relevant to them. Juggernaut Guardian and Sork Sage get 6%. Everyone else gets 9%. So the vast majority of people do have 9% and should be in primary stat.
Right.
An excellent example, the Sentinel Marauder And this is just an example, because you do need to know your class, your advanced class, and know your talent points in particular. Because what it really does boil down to is if you have a class that has the ability, especially if it's baked into your core priority list of abilities, you want, if it's forcing crit to be 100%, and Smash Spec in particular is excellent for this, they're getting their highest damage output abilities are forcing 100% crit chance anyway. The crit from your primary stat is just not valuable to you the way that the raw power is. And since you're not getting your primary stat, you know, that damage differential is 9 rather than 1. And he actually knows more about the Sentinels Marauders, so that would be to Ghost Mirror's point. Ghost Mirror's playing the second tree. The second tree also has a lot of baked-in forcing crit naturally. So yes, that is actually, knowing your character, a likelihood based off of where your gear's at, that the power is probably benefiting you more now. And so that's really the crux of the matter. You need to learn your class. You need to understand how your abilities work together. If you're able to force crit with regularity or frequency, then crit itself is less valuable to you, so you can consider that power. But if you can't, which most classes can't, there are exceptions, but if you can't, then the primary stat is more often than not going to definitely be better for you, and 9% just use your primary stat. And healers, we also did talk about healers, and he said he would, from everything he knows about healers and how the healing works and the math that he's done, healers shouldn't even be having this conversation. They should be in their primary stat. Their healing talent points and abilities work together. It really benefits to have the extra crit. It benefits them a lot more for the primary stat.
If the damage bonus from using the power augments is so trivial, I mean, 0.1% is pretty trivial. I just can't see it as ever being a real choice.
Well, and he said really with
other than...
And he was saying with the numbers, like really, it's not worth it. None of the nightmare modes are tuned hard enough that you even have to worry about these augments. If you've already invested all of the credits to be in your primary stat anyway, it's going to be trivial to be switching to power. Right. It's not going to save you from an enrage timer. But he did say, you know, there are some cases, and it's really about you using your class. And there's also something very relevant to be said about if you change these and you find yourself doing better, there could be any number of reasons that that's working for you. Even if it's just a placebo effect, if it makes you do better numbers on the dummy, then do it.
Right.
Oh, placebo effect is never a good reason to recommend something. But yeah, if it wouldn't, no. Main stat.
Yeah, main stat's generally very, very true, and you know, otherwise know your class.
All right. Are we ready to move on to part 2?
Yes.
All right. So the second part of the discussion, second and last, is that our guildmate Turg had an interesting hypothesis, which he supported with graphs, many graphs. The basic point was that at a certain level of gear, once your bonus damage had reached a certain amount, it was actually better to start stacking crit. Yeah, because as we all know, everyone says never, ever, ever put crit on your gear. That's, again, one of those consensus things that has been true, apparently, up until now. But according to Turg, and Ufalong has commented on this they've discussed it with Red, so he can comment, he is saying that, I think his takeaway is, he says, at 1800 damage and 70% surge, and getting that on your gear is actually not that hard with like 180 level gear. The difference between crit and power is indistinguishable until 400 plus crit. Now, it's worth noting that with your enhancements, you will have several stats, and the DPS ones, there's always a trade-off between crit and power, and then some other stat like surge, alacrity, and accuracy, and I think it's endurance. So you actually do have to make a choice with your enhancements whether to go crit or power. So the choice at this point has been power. Turg is saying once you reach a certain point of damage and surge, it's actually better to go choose crit over power. Now the reason for that is because it's simple. Once you're doing enough damage, just that simple chance of critting on top of your regular hits will actually mean your bonus damage is actually, your overall damage output is greater than it would be than if you just increased the magnitude by going power. So if you just went straight power, you would crit less, but be hitting harder. If you go crit instead, your non-crits would be a bit less, but you'll be critting more, and so those are obviously, you get the surge bonus on top of that. So that's his reasoning, and he's got graphs. So, Red, what does Ufalong say?
How much time do we have?
Time for you to summarize.
Turg does a phenomenal job here of demonstrating to us that there's value in crit, which Ufalong agrees with 100%. One of the big misnomers that really came, and Ufalong himself even admitted that he fell prey to this, and I know I fell prey to this, and the vast majority of the population pretty much thought the crit had no power with 2.0. Ufalong actually says that it probably had some relatively good value even at 2.0, certainly soon after, as soon as people were getting into their first full sets of gear. And as we were discussing this, because he's got a much deeper understanding than basically just comparing crit, power, and surge, the difficulty lies in again, it's about your class, where your class is, because some of us get flat crit, some of us get bonus to surge. A lot of the healers, they get, moments of bonuses to surge, so crit's very valuable because they want to crit and take advantage of those higher surge levels. The way those sometimes it's a flat crit advantage, sometimes it's only to certain abilities, sometimes it's only when one ability's done one thing, then these other abilities get those.
Right.
It was very complicated. The other thing is that this becomes highly, highly complicated because the damage tooltip, which you totally read his post on Dolphy, I think it's his second post. Tooltip, yeah, I think it was his second post, where he breaks down how the damage on your character sheet, the tooltip, you've got various different numbers. He really breaks down where those numbers come from, and then the fact that there's even hidden numbers that aren't on that character sheet but are calculated into how damage is done. And then what's even worse about that is that how each of those numbers works affects each of your different abilities differently, with different coefficients is what we call them. So some of us are familiar with this term. So each ability has a different coefficient, and so how those all tie together and everything. So basically, raw comparing damage and surge and crit is way too simplistic. Turg is spot on here that crit has value. And his point to, and I did follow up with Ufalong to make sure that my saying this is accurate. Turg is also 100%. The more damage, overall damage you have on that tooltip, the more valuable crit rating does become.
Okay.
So you do want crit rating. Now we use this a lot, and based off of the various gear points, crit's going to be valuable. I think he figured out at the highest level of gear, the secondary stats. So if you're deciding between power or crit, your budget is 1,800 points. You're probably not going to want to go, well, I would say definitely don't go over 500 crit rating. So 500 would be a massive number on crit rating. But get some crit rating. And again, this ties into how do your talent trees work. And it's not just like your advanced class. It's the talent tree within the advanced class. But say if you, arbitrarily, I'm going to say 300. Say 300 is a good round number to go for. If your talent tree has things that make crit more valuable, so say it boosts your surge, even above what you've got, crit becomes more valuable from surge as well, because it's hitting harder every time it crits. You might want more crit, especially if it's giving you resource back and you're having resource problems. You're definitely going to want more crit. That's another issue. But if your talent tree really does provide you with more benefit, you can see value from crit because surge is being increased, then you're going to want more crit rating than 300. Say they go up to 350. But if you're in one of these other advanced classes where you have maybe 2 or 3 abilities where you guarantee a crit now and then, crit rating itself becomes less valuable because you can make a crit happen when you want it to on demand. So you don't need that you have less of that random to even be concerned with. So again, I would say a few hundred crit rating is a good place to go. You're still definitely going to want to be the majority power, but it does have value, and it is going to overall increase your DPS.
Okay.
And we have really been saying, I think I've said it a bunch of times on previous shows, just go power, just go power. I've been misstating that. So
Right. And
I'm glad Turd brought this up.
And it would have been more accurate earlier in since McKeb, but now that we're several operations in and gear's getting better, crit is now starting to take a little bit more of its more of a place in people's
and it's
budget.
yeah,
Now,
and to Turg's point in particular, like having sacrificed crit.
Hang on a sec. It took me a while to kind of figure out exactly what was kind of being represented by these charts. It was not sort of obvious to me. But especially the bottom charts, because there's more of a... It cuts over, it's a little bit easier, but the ones that are 210 crit versus power, 311 crit versus power, and 410 crit versus power, it's kind of... What it's showing is the red line is the like the power line, and then it's basically what my takeaway is from all these is that the more power you have, the more likely it is that crit is going to help you. Because when those lines start to cross, the red line is when crit is becoming more valuable.
Correct.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're way out at 2200 power, it's extremely likely you'll only need about 60% surge, which is pretty easy to get. In order to say, yeah, crit's starting to get better than power. But if you're down at the 1400 to 1600 level, crit is never going to be more valuable.
Correct. You know. It's all about your primary damage, and once it reaches a certain threshold, and your surge has to be at a certain level as well. You were saying 70%, but again, that's reasonably easy to get to. If your bonus damage is that high and your gear is roughly all equivalent, you should also have the 70%.
Yeah, and that's something that actually came up in my discussion with him. I hadn't even realized it, but the difference between our first tier of gear after 2.0 and the current highest gear, it's only like 3% surge. It has not changed that much. We've actually had that really high surge rating.
Yes. Well, we know that surge is the one secondary stat that really falls off hard. So, I mean, you can get too much surge very easily.
Yeah. But it was a bonus damage that had to increase with our gear, and that actually has gone up.
Yeah.
The various tiers.
Yeah, well, because both the primary stat and the power stat have been going up, whereas only surge affects surge.
Yeah. All right.
And the barrels too, because that's that hidden stat. The barrels itself actually increases your overall damage, independent of your primary stat and your power.
Is it hidden? Do you mean
or
you mean tech power or
no base weapon damage goes up by your barrel and your offhand or hilt.
Okay.
And also, a lot of people forget this, but now that we have armor rings in our offhands for our soluble offhands, those, when they are in an offhand, do have the same impact as if you're not a dual wielder.
Right.
Okay.
He does a really good job. It's very hard to understand because it is very math. He tries his best to make it very simple, but because math is hard, it may not be obvious. The biggest thing I would say, if you want to read through his stuff, it's actually not that hard to understand if you take the time to focus on it, and also don't make any assumptions. Don't try to make connections or anything, because all he's published so far is basics. He's really just explaining what you see. Don't read the stuff in italics, because that would be details about file names and stuff like that. That's just going to confuse you. Ignore the italics. It doesn't have anything to do with what he's trying to present. But just look at what he tells you as this is what these numbers mean. Don't try to draw conclusions from them, because he hasn't made any posts yet that are giving you conclusions. I had to actually ask him direct questions in order to sort out how we can start making some of these conclusions. And that's why so much of this is you have to understand how your talent trees are working and how it's your damage to be able to make the decision.
And you probably need a fairly complex model to actually simulate this. And
to do it even more accurately, yeah.
If you actually wanted a real answer, as opposed to... The problem with this kind of stuff is playing these things tend to be dynamic, which is why modeling is actually better than trying to do it via formula for the most part. But you can get a rough view via math, which is hard.
and I do want to say, too, this is not a quote, this is me, but the reason he was cautious, I believe, in saying that, he said it nicely. A lot of people are misconstruing or whatever the concept of the soft cap. When it comes to diminishing returns on stats, there are no soft caps in the game other than Surge, and we don't have gear that lets you actually hit like the cap.
Sure. I mean, all you have to do is look at the actual graphs of the fall.
So all of these stats that we have that have with the gear stat budgets that we have, it's virtually a linear line for primary stat, for crit rating, for crit from primary stat, for power. Well, power is just linear, but all of these things, when you're talking, they might have slight diminishing returns. There's no soft cap in the discussion. Just don't even worry about that.
And of course, all this applies until game update 3.0, sometimes towards the end of the year, when we have an expansion, a level cap increase, and everything changes again. But we'll have whole new gear to get anyway. So, look forward to Red's interview with Ufalong, which should be published Monday week, basically.
Right. Yep. And if you're not a hardcore operations dealer or whatever, I would say the takeaway from this is that you can't go wrong really doing just your primary stat, because you have to get to pretty solid gear, really high-end gear before you have to even think about doing anything else.
As far as your enhancements go, probably stick with power. If you got a choice, crit probably won't hurt either.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I think the easiest way to look at this, because any hard and fast numbers, but the easiest way when you're gearing, take what gear you get. Take your sets that are given to you from token drops. Take the set as a whole from your PvP vendor. Get that. Then, when you're considering, okay, your augments, primary stat. I mean, just go with your primary stat unless you really know that your class is an exception. Mm-hmm. And then B, once you've got every single piece, your earpiece, your implants, your relics, your belt, your bracer, and all your set pieces with your weapon and offhand, then if you want to start streamlining your gear, just maybe take out one or two, either a mod or enhancement. Don't strip all the crit out. Maybe you want a little bit more power, but don't strip it all out. Leave some in there because it's going to do you good.
And let's leave it there.
All right, that's the show. If you'd like to play with us in the Utini Knights Guild on the Republic side of the Harbinger server, or in our
Utini Rage
Guild on the Empire side, do a /c join Utini to join the Utini channel. Then ask for the quiz that lets us know you're a fan of the show. You can email questions and comments about the show to OotiniCast@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter. We're on @OotiniCast. I Twitter under my own name @Brandon L. Starr, and Two uses his name @Jason Etheridge. Red Twitter's under @R3DN4, or you can watch him on twitch.tv/R3DN4. Check out our website, OotiniCast.com, which has links to our presence on Google Plus and Facebook. You can subscribe to us on iTunes. We're also on Stitcher. Our theme song is from Mevia's Music Alley. Check it out at music.mevio.com. That's MEVIO. And thank you to the chat room, and thank you, Red.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week.
All right, gentlemen, stop your recording now. Chat room, thank you. Thank you. It's great to see so many people.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Been a little distracted with the discussion, but that's good stuff. All right, we'll stop the broadcast there. Remember, the next show will be posted, well, after this one, on Monday next week, US time, which will be the interview with Swotor Miner, and our regular show next week, and then the week after will be the interview that Red does with Ufalong.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Alright.
which,
And to
don't worry, I'm not going to make it super math geeky. I'd actually like some background and personal information on him too. So,
Alright.
Awesome. And Tio, the general chat room consensus was that I was a little bit, or quite a bit quieter than past weeks. So let me know if this, is a little too quiet, and I can find something in the middle,
Okay.
if so.
Alright.
So yeah.
Alright, guys. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you next week.
night.